Hi, welcome to the first OSC tutorial. As you can see, OSC just updated to the latest version, 1.0.3. In the download section, you can download the version that best suits them for your operating system. We have versions for Mac, Intel, and Macs with M chips, be it an M1, M2, or 3, and also for Windows. OSC comes configured to work with default settings by Resolume. However, let's do a review of what we have to do to have a stable connection. Let's make a connection between these two programs within the same computer. For this, we are going to go to Resolume Preferences. In Preferences, let's go to the OSC tab, and we are going to do the same in OSC. Let's go to Settings. And in Settings, we can see the different parameters that allow us to do a connection between both programs. When we make an OSC connection, via command line allows us control one program to another, whether going or returning. Give us a check very precise of different parameters of different programs. Resolume, it is very well implemented in OSC. So it is very versatile and a very safe way to control Resolume. In its last update, you have enabled the monitoring option to be able to see the messages incoming and outgoing of the OSC protocol. To start with settings, let's go first to enable both the entrance as Resolume output of messages. By default, Resolume has the input at port 7000 and the exit at port 7001. Yes, these are your settings. It is very good. You can change the value if you want to any other number. We will do the same at OSC. We will use the same parameters, but vice versa. What is in here is out, and what is out here is in. Simple. So if our input is 7000, our OSC output should be 7000. And if our Resolume output is 7001, our input is 7001. We could use any other value for OSC ports. We can use more ports if we had different programs in the same computer, so as not to interfere nor complicate communications between different software. Once a port is opened, this program will use that port, and it will already be busy. Regarding the IPs, we will use localhost. Localhost is used exclusively to work internally within the same computer with different programs. So if we are going to work on localhost, we will use the IP 127.0.0.1. And we will use the same IP in OSC 127.0.0.1. As you can see, in OSC, there are options to add more IPs. Very useful to control more programs or more copies of the same project. For example, if from OSC I want to control another Resolume with another IP within the local network, I can add it. I can edit the value here and put the IP from the other computer. In OSC, we can add all the IPs that are necessary. We can have some for backup to control other programs, suddenly, some for lasers, etc. Once this is done, we could say that we have communication. Regarding audio settings, here we can define the inputs and outputs. For example, to connect the SMPTE protocol, that allows us to control the timecode by external audio. When selecting the audio output, we can select any of the audio interfaces that we have in our system. This, for example, if we want to send audios from OSC, suddenly you want to play a music track to play on the PA. For a corporate event, for example, currently we work with 30 frames. Soon, we will have more updates for different formats. Once this is done, we return to Resolume. We return to OSC. Very important. Many times when we edit the OSC parameters in Resolume, by default, is designated to send all OSC messages, output all OSC messages. If we put output no OSC messages, as much as this window is active, Resolume will not send commands. To have OSC communication, it is necessary to have it enabled. Effectively, Resolume is sending the date. It means that we have outbound communication. OSC is based on tracks. Tracks are the basis of OSC workflow. Tracks are basically timecode, or rather, timelines. In OSC, tracks can be played by 3 types of timecode, and they can work in 2 modes. Received mode, which is for recording commands in real time. Live mode, which is for playing commands. If none is selected, OSC will not receive or send any command. If we want to record something that is happening in Resolume, we are going to use received mode. And if we want to play commands, we are going to use live mode. Very important note, since many times, OSC is used to control shows. For example, of a musical band, these usually use SMPT for synchronization. In many cases, different SMPT schedules for musical themes. But there are productions that use the same schedule in your setlist, the same SMPT timecode schedule for all tracks. For this, there is this button, the most important. In OSC, the lightning bolt. What the lightning bolt does is enable sending and receiving commands by track, only activated manually and one at a time, because in this way we ensure that the commands are being sent correct. When we create a track, we can delete it with X on the right side. We can also upload an audio file and we can put whatever name we want. Let's give it a name, track 1. We can edit it directly on the track. One of the functions practices that OSC has is being able to do drag and drop and move the order of the tracks. This allows us to reorder our setlist. In the tracks, we can use this icon that allows us to load an audio file. Once the audio is loaded, we can see the waveform of that file. If we directly want to reproduce it, we can use file mode. And file mode allows us to reproduce the audio and listen to it in our interface. With this button skip, we can advance or go back 10 by 10. And with the one here, return at the beginning. If we wanted to loop on a track, we press the loop button. Very useful for fixed installations. We could create a timeline that lasts hours, or for simpler cases, if we want to go to the bathroom or for a beer, we can leave our track in loop mode. It is not necessary to be glued to the computer. This same timeline can be reproduced by SMPTE. It means that if I want, I can do that the advancement of this timeline be controlled by SMPTE. By clicking play, I can see how my timeline in OSC is controlled by SMPTE audio. If I go back or forward the audio, our timeline immediately, it will advance or regress depending SMPTE audio file position. This is how synchronization works of the LTC SMPTE protocol. Finally, the free mode play the timeline. Without the need for a file or SMPTE, simply by internal timecode. Obviously, it's not going to make any sound. The only way to make sounds in OSC is through file mode. Now we will see how to navigate at OSC. With the mouse wheel, we can zoom in on the timeline. To move on the timeline, we press the space bar, we click the mouse, and so we can move through the timeline. For precise editing of commands, OSC has been specially designed and created to work hand in hand with Resolume parameters or settings that come by default at OSC are designed to work without any problem or in a very direct way with Resolume. However, we can work practically with any program that works with the OSC protocol, such as MadMapper, Beyond for lasers or the MA3 console. It's all a matter of adding address. OSC addresses. In the OSC addresses window is the window where we select what do we want to record. Out of the box, Resolume produces a lot of data when sending OSC commands. What we do at OSC is filter those messages and receive only those necessary for our project. So, for example, in my case, I have gotten used to working through columns. I click on a column, and in the column I have different elements that generate a composition. In another column I can have others items, or I can also change clips. I can use the master opacity, changing decks. It depends on you. Sometimes less is more. So, to be able to work with OSC, I'm going to define first what I want to record. By default, OSC comes with presets for Resolume, the most common and the most practical. We will soon add new ones, presets for Mad Mapper, Milliman, Beyond and MA3. We will be delighted to receive your comments and to be able to add in the presets your favorite programs. For example, if I want to record columns, I'm going to record all the column movements. In the case of columns, OSC will record all changes of column that occur within Resolume. I can also define the color for the presets as a visual guide. I'm going to add a preset from another category, like clip selection. Now in Oz, see the changes in clip selection. I also want to log changes to the master opacity. I select master opacity. And finally, I want to record the change of decks, because I want to change the decks during my show. What would happen if I want to record a parameter that is not defined? In the presets, for example, if I want to record the scale of this clip, or the scale of all clips, we go to Shortcuts and activate OSC. We select the parameter what we want to control. So if I put Control or CMDC, I'm going to copy and I can paste the parameter. What is going to happen? That is only going to work with layer 2 and clip 3. That corresponds to that element promptly. But let's say I want it to record all scale changes of all clips. And of all the layers, simply I'm going to replace the value. That belongs to the layer and I'm going to change it to an asterisk. And for the clips, we do the same. I'm going to change it to an asterisk. So now I'll be able to record the scale of all clips at any clip and any layer. With this custom option, we can practically add any parameter that we would like to record, be it from Resolume or any other program. Well, now let's get to the action. Let's record a sequence in received mode in Resolume and OSC. As you already know, the file, we can change it directly with musical note symbol, or we can even do drag and drop on the timeline to replace it. In received mode, we will play a file or an audio to be able to listen to it and perform live with Resolume. We click play and start. For example, I'm playing with columns. I select a clip. Now I'm going to change deck. It's a jam session. The idea is that you work with Resolume as you usually work live, and OSC will be in charge of recording all your commands. After recording live, different commands were registered on the timeline. Each one in the corresponding category assigned in the address window. We can see that the color keyframes green belong to column changes. The value is also recorded when we work with commands. In toggle, the value is 1. When we work faders, for example, the master opacity, values can be variable depending on the fader position. In OSC, we can move the keyframes. Let's say this cue did not enter the beat. We can adjust it guided by the waveform, or we can directly move time, editing the time recorded in the keyframe. We put 18 and boom, it gets to the exact point. Other things we can do is to select several keyframes and drag them across the timeline. In the new update, we have added Ctrl-Z. I'll use Ctrl-Z to return to previous position, and Ctrl-Y to redo. We can also select all keyframes and use Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V to copy the keyframes and put them in the position we want. All parameters are editable directly in the address. I no longer want it to go to deck 2, for example. I want you to go to deck 5 now. I edit it. Let's go to deck 5. What is important is that with OSC, see the changes we make. They do not depend on a render because it is supported Resolume real-time engine, or your favorite show. We do a blackout, and to play the commands, we activate live mode. We go back the track and click play. And now, hands-free without touching Resolume, our programming and commands, they are reproduced perfectly. We can review our show, make adjustments in time. Suddenly, I want command to come in sooner. I drag it and place it where I need it. We can correct whatever we like. The next one, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Nothing bad. Finally, I'm going to give it some additional tips that OSC has. In this track we have worked with a position of elements inside Resolume. Resolume orders its columns by numbering and clips progressively. For example, this is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. The same goes for clips. This is clip 2, 3, 4. This is how Resolume works by numbering. What happens if, for example, in a production, they ask us to add different elements, and we are no longer in 1, if not, we are in column 5 or 4. By clicking play on OSC See, obviously this elements. They will no longer match because the location of our clips and columns has changed. When we hit play, we see that the elements no longer match, so our sequence, it no longer works. Let's see how this element, it runs, but there is nothing. Don't worry, OSC has the solution. That's why there is column offset, allowing us to realign the content. All the elements of our track at OSC See, according to the value that we need adjust. If we first start in column 1, and now we start in column 5, it means that we have added 4 columns or spaces. In column offset we put +4, and all our values are going to be readjusted of automatic form. And the values have been renumbered internally within the track. Offset can be applied to each track. We can even have negative values if we suddenly decrease columns, and it would not be more 1, more 3, suddenly it would be -5, -15, -10. We will put the necessary value to realign ourselves to the project. In each track you can edit, independently, the offset of columns and the SMPTE offset. We can adjust each track to our needs. I have already modified the column offset, and now I want to modify the SMPTE offset. Let's say, if I want to start in the time 00, OSC See will be controlled from time 00 by SMPTE timecode. But what happens if suddenly we modify the start time of that track? Now let's start from the minute 00:02. Then when you press play, our timeline no longer exists because it is not reaching minute 2. Let's advance this track to the minute 2 to see how it works. Now, the timeline runs from minute 2. This allows us to become independent by track, offset schedule, and so we can adjust to the new schedules from production. It is adaptable in real time, according to the changes that we have in our project. The director mode of work at OSC See it is very useful for directors without the need to use Resolume or other software. How does director mode work? It's very simple. We select what we want to hear or what we want to program. Let's play this audio. Yes, I am a show director and I don't use Resolume. I can create markers on the timeline with indications for the different areas. For example, for the lighting area, the video area, the laser area, or the FX area. We click play and we create markers. I'm listening to the music and I decide to put a marker. I want another marker and I can put it using the plus button and boom! A marker is created. Boom! Another one. But what happens with the marker? In the marker, directly nothing exists, it is simply a marker. Here I can write an indication. For example, lights on. Here, I want video in. And here I want a strobe. As a director, I can write down instructions for an opening or a happening directly with the markers. The good thing about OSC is that these markers can be converted directly into commands. It is not necessary to have a license to create or send markers. Upon receiving the OSC project, I, being the video director, can open the project and convert the markers. I want to convert the marker video into a command. Then I paste the address OSC value 1 and automatically that marker became in command. Having become command now directly, can control our favorite program. Let's hit play. Perfect. Suddenly we want another. Of the markers we have becomes another command. For example, we want it to run that specific clip. We copied it directly from Resolume. And we will convert is marker enter, and it has already been converted to the clips category. Blackout. We press play. And this, friends, is how we can use director mode to design a show without the need of using Resolume. Thank you very much for reaching out. This part of our first tutorial.